I can hear you. Why is that? How about there?
Yeah, there we go.
There's Matt Gates. I love it. See, that's the kind of guy you want in there.
Is she Opus Dei? I heard she might be Opus Dei.
I don't know.
Okay, stand by.
All right.
I'm your host, Brendan Traynor. My co-host, Leland Faegre.
Lots of arrows in our quiver, folks.
Yes. How many days till the election?
41.
41 days till the election.
I didn't say 141. I said 41.
Yes.
Man, has it gone by quickly.
And it being the end of September, the big equity firms, hedge funds, they're all taking profits on the precious metals. So the precious metals are down for this week, but they should rebound.
Yeah, but they've been very resilient.
Yeah.
You should be overweighted in precious metals at this point.
Right. Okay, so I guess the biggest news of the week since our last show was the death on Friday of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which has roiled the Washington establishment and politics in Washington,
Did you say
D.C.
roiled?
Roiled, R-O-I-L-E-D,
so that's
not
a verb.
R-O-Y-A-L-E-D.
Oh, I see.
So what can we say about RBG?
Plenty.
That hasn't been said in other venues.
Oh, we got all kinds of arrows in our quiver.
Well, I started off with a little bit of just how she's most well known for being a feminist, right? But she does not really match up with today's feminists. No, she was an old-fashioned liberal, yes. She basically wanted women to have the same chance as men. And forgive us if we're two old boomer Irish men here talking about women's rights.
Well, speak for yourself.
We have to get, we have a right. Now, she was a dedicated workaholic, but, most women, frankly, are not. And that explains a lot of the disparity of women in STEM, for example,
Sure.
and high tech and so on. But there are some, and she opened the doors for them. She believed that women could be a match for men, and all they needed was a little help to break through a glass ceiling. But she didn't want to change the essential nature of the society.
Right.
Whereas the feminists that we have today, they're all about changing the institutions to accommodate the needs of women and POC, people of color, right? And so
you're going to acronym people of color?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Everybody does that.
Okay.
So we can be sure we don't mean just blacks or people of color, POC.
All people.
Yes.
All lives matter.
All except white people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yet, so we don't have a color. We're
That's
pink
right.
or whatever.
Transparent.
So that's something to keep in mind about her. And it's also interesting that she, and I think this has been mentioned in the news, but she actually did not like Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. She thought it was wrongly decided, like
there
a lot of people.
There has been some discussion. I did hear a couple of bites about that. But obviously that hurts their narrative, so they don't go into it too much.
Yeah.
So.
She was upset about it because she thought that the court should have just settled the case before them without going off into this whole legal standard that affects all 50 states, striking down all these laws that the states had lived by, and thereby turning the country into turmoil for for decades. And it's still, one of the hot button issues. Yeah. So for that, she had some good sense. She didn't know much about guns. I mean, most liberals don't.
That's right.
She did vote in favor of the Fourth Amendment. Just this last term, she joined Judge Gorsuch in upholding Fourth Amendment. So she did believe in individual rights. She didn't show complete deference to the police, which is a good thing. And but this is where we're talking truth to justice, talking truth to power here.
That's another show.
Yeah. It's
a lot of people make that mistake.
Her couple of things. First of all, she favored affirmative action. Now, she wrote the dissent in a famous case, Ricci versus DeStefano, about a New Haven, Connecticut fireman's test. And fireman Frank Ricci, for promotion to become a fire chief or an officer. Mm-hmm. Frank Ricci and 19 other white and Hispanic firemen who had earned promotions on the civil service promotion test, which had been carefully and intentionally designed to be fair to blacks. In other words, the city of New Haven got input from the NAACP and other groups in designing the test.
Affirmative action.
Yes.
Kind of.
But then afterwards, not a single black fireman in New Haven qualified according to the test.
It didn't work.
No, it didn't work. So
they had to scrap it, didn't they?
Right. So they scrapped the test.
Yeah.
And thereby scrapped the promotion for Ricci and these other 19 white and Hispanic firemen. So they sued, and it was a 5-4 decision for Ricci, and RGB wrote the dissent. And affirming the fact that there was affirmative action and they should have done more, and there was always some other way they could accommodate them. I think part of the problem was the test was 60% written and 40% verbal or in-person interviews. Mm-hmm. And she thought that was unfair because blacks have fewer literary skills, shall we say, or answering written tests.
Are you going after public schools as we speak?
Yeah, I'm going after several things.
That's fair. Yeah. A lot of arrows in our quiver.
If only they had weighted it to 60% in favor of the face-to-face appearance and interviews of the contestants, she was sure they would have benefited from the knowledge that the black people that failed the test could have imparted personally.
Yeah, well, I guess you could have biological extension. That's
right.
How it play out.
But what is interesting is that in her 40 years, we'll be right back.
Well, we got a few seconds to elaborate.
Yeah, but in her 40 years in judgeships, she only had one black vote for 1 year.
Hi, this is Eddie Floyd. Let me tell you about my favorite non-profit public charity, Wainema Wild Horse Sanctuary, located on the Forsyth Ranch in Hallelujah Junction area. And please go to www.wainemaranch.com. That's WYNEMA ranch.com.
This overload.
Shannon Lawson here. Join us for the Nevada Radio Roundup, Fridays at 2 p.m. A good news variety show all about the local scene. The Nevada Roundup, Friday at 2.
Are you shy and don't want to talk on the air? Text us your questions or comments to 775-237-2266. Now, back to the show.
Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. When we were talking about the late RGB And we're just trying to bring a little bit of a different perspective to her career on the bench, which we hope will enlighten you to some of the things, the situations that are ongoing now after her death. And as you know, Trump is definitely moving forward with the nomination. And I know the Democrats are outrageous, but you know, he's obviously in violation of the Constitution.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a clause right
when
there.
When you have a vacancy on the Supreme Court, you let that be vacant for as long as you possibly can. That's what it says in the Constitution.
Well, yeah, there's also a clause that says the president must listen to the advice of nice Jewish ladies.
Okay. For which she was one.
Yes, okay. So
she's not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, by the way.
Okay, that's good. Now we are going to the law clerk that she had, the only one in her 40 years as a judge for 1 year, was Paul Wolford, who is admittedly brilliant, extremely brilliant black gentleman, and he's now serving on the Ninth Circuit. But he is a light-skinned black from Laguna Beach, which is not exactly the ghetto.
So that doesn't count, does it?
In other words, he grew up in an all-white environment. So that's a little bit interesting. But it's also kind of shows liberals in general. It's affirmative action for thee, but not for me. I mean, contrast her to Justice Kavanaugh, who makes a big deal about always largely hiring women as his clerks. And there's also she's also been called PEP. And what does that mean? It means progressive except for Palestinians.
Yes. So she could be on our Jews in the News segment.
Yeah, she could have been. Yeah. But we'll
probably have that next week, won't we?
Yeah. But she never once spoke up about the rights of Palestinians, and in fact, she made some very curious decisions. For example, in 2002, she gave a speech to the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, in which she praised Judah P. Benjamin, who was the Attorney General, Secretary of War, and Secretary of State in the Confederacy.
You might want to pull over for this one, ladies and gentlemen. This is damn good.
And he was Jewish.
Yeah.
And she praised him for his life after the Confederacy. She said he could have gone to France and made a fortune, but instead he stayed in England and started all over again as a law clerk, although they did waive some requirements, and eventually became a judge. He became an appeals court judge in England. But what she didn't mention, maybe she didn't know, but she did mention that it was Judah P. Benjamin who met in England with Southerners and funded the KKK out of his personal fortune.
Oops.
So, and it is kind of curious even that she would give a speech about a leader of the Confederacy as a sitting U.S. judge. But, you know, blood is thicker than water, I guess. But anyway, that the other thing that highlights the fact that she was indifferent to the Palestinians was in 2018, actress Natalie Portman turned down a prestigious award from Israel and a $2 million cash prize due to the callous treatment of Gaza demonstrators. That was when the nonviolent, except, you know, rocks might have been thrown against the fence or whatever, but basically nonviolent protests in Gaza about their conditions and the blockade on getting supplies and so on. RGB reached out to Israel, said she would accept the award and donate money to women's groups in Israel and the U.S. She didn't accept that award, but she accepted an award for lifetime achievement, and she went to Israel and gave a speech in the midst of the violence. There were even a few Jewish women who were sympathetic to the Palestinians who were injured demonstrating for them. So
I have a vague recollection of that trip over there when she went there. Yeah.
And then it's also worth pointing out that she was a close friend of Justice Louis Brandeis, who was the first Jewish Supreme Court justice. And later it was revealed that Brandeis, along with then federal court judge, but later Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter, had formed a secret Zionist society that lobbied for the creation of Israel.
Shocking. absolutely shocking. I tell you.
I mean, take it what you will, but, besides affirmative action liberalism, I mean, this could be taken by some as another example of Jewish situational ethics. When they're in the minority in a Western country, they portray themselves as having universalist values. So for human rights, everybody is equal, equalitarian. That's the way they portray themselves. I remember when Roseanne Barr got into
self-described, you mean?
Yeah, self-described. Mm-hmm. When Roseanne Barr got into trouble one time recently and lost her show, she did an interview in which she appeared with her Reformed Jewish rabbi, and the first thing he said is, "We are Jews and we believe in universal rights, and we're not prejudiced, and we're not racist."
RBG was proud of her Jewish heritage.
Oh yeah. But the fact is, when they're in the majority in Israel, then they revert to this whole chosen people thing, and
it's in the book.
Yeah, it's in the Talmud.
It's in the book.
It's in their Talmud. Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, who's going to argue with that?
Contrary to public opinion, Orthodox Jews do not read the Old Testament. They strictly read the Babylonian Talmud and commentaries. And the Talmud is extremely racist and prejudicial against anybody who is not one of the chosen people. If you didn't know that, well, that's why
now.
we're called Talking Truth to Power.
That's why we call the show Talking Truth to Power, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. So, and the interesting thing is that if that Catholic woman, what's her name? I can't think of her name. That President Trump might nominate. There's two. One of them is...
I think they're both Catholic.
Yeah, one of them is a graduate of Notre Dame, and the other one is a Cuban-American in Florida. And they're going to make a big deal over her faith, but nobody ever can talk about any possible conflicts of interest in putting about the Jewish faith.
Right, right. No, that's off limits.
That's off limits, yeah. So... at any rate, these are things to keep in mind as we're going in. The president should announce his decision on Saturday, he says. So we'll be back.
One was Amy Barrett.
Amy Coney Barrett, yes.
And that's probably the front runner there. But the political thinking is that the selection of the Cuban American might be the best choice politically if he needed her to persuade the electoral balance in Florida, but it doesn't look like he really does need that bias.
Hopefully he doesn't, but people are saying, Florida doesn't have any picayune mail-in ballot laws like we just saw in Pennsylvania, where if you don't put your ballot inside one envelope and then put that envelope inside the mailing envelope, it'll be completely discredited.
Right.
They don't have any picayune laws like that, so we may know who the presidential
does the Transition
nominee
Integrity
is.
Project know this?
If Trump wins Florida, then there's a good chance he's going to win the election, and vice versa for Biden. So we'll have to keep an eye on Florida on November 3rd. But it's going to be interesting. If Amy Coney Barrett is supposed, I think I heard her say she was Opus Dei, which is
I think so. That's what Dianne Feinstein was asking her in sort of a qualified way before a previous hearing. Did you see that?
Right. And Kamala Harris.
She alluded to it.
Yeah. Kamala Harris doesn't even like the Knights of Columbus, which is, she came down on another judge, which is, my father belonged to the Knights of Columbus. He was a moderate Republican. I mean, that's a charitable organization. They're
just drinking buddies, aren't they?
Yeah, they get together with the priest.
Yeah.
And tell a few Catholic-type jokes and have breakfast and
enjoy themselves?
Yeah, enjoy themselves, give each other awards, things like that. It's a fraternal organization, like only with a Catholic twist, like the Moose or the Elks or whatever. Right. Yeah,
Just a watering hole.
But Opus Dei is a very traditionalist Catholic. I mean, they would probably not like the current Pope because they would be... If she
I don't
Opus
like the
Dei.
current Pope.
Right. A lot of people don't like the current Pope, but I mean, they're not exactly the Jesuits. Let me put it that way. they're more likely to be on the right and more likely to believe in traditional marriage and things of that nature. So it'll be interesting to see if that gets brought up. And
I'm sure it's going to be part of the discussion. I mean, they've got 3 days to qualify this woman, whoever it turns out to be. So they're gonna really, sharpen their knives on her.
Yeah. Now, what are they going to get her for? I mean,
I don't know. They can't treat her like they treated Kavanaugh.
No, she wasn't a Catholic frat boy that bragged about all the beer he drank.
Yeah, and he was a serial rapist. They can't say that about her.
Yeah.
But they are unqualifiedly inhuman people. These people are not decent. The D in Democrat does not stand for decency.
Decency, exactly. Yeah, it stands for decrepit, degenerate.
Yeah, there's all kinds
delirious.
of horrible group of people.
Yeah, as we're seeing more and more.
And I'm going to take my ball and go home. That's what's going to happen on the 4th of November.
Okay.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
And welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, and I'm here with Leland Faegre, and we've been discussing numerous things relating to what's going on in the news.
Lots of arrows in our quiver, ladies and gentlemen. Stand by.
So, Leland, have you seen any of the mugshots about these arrested Antifa
I have seen
people?
those. That's quite a bunch of them, aren't there? Just a face you couldn't possibly love unless you were the mother.
Yeah.
That's I've heard before expression.
I know.
Unless you were their mother, you couldn't love those mugshots.
No, I mean, they are just ugly. And some of them are weird. I mean, there's one guy with a big head. He looks like an alien, and his eyes are, like, way apart. And,
Well, that's the Visigothian bloodline. That's where that comes from.
I don't know where it comes from, but boy.
Vandals and
they're
Visigoths.
ugly. So, is there a correlation here? Because they're nihilists, right? They want to burn everything down.
I think that's what happens to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then so, they're the enemies of Western civilization, which is known for its emphasis on classical beauty, So if you're an enemy of classical beauty, you've got to be ugly, I think.
And so that's where they go? That's where they gravitate?
Yes, I think so.
That's where all the ugly people go?
Right.
Okay.
And some of them are obvious. There's been rumors about the use of methamphetamines to get themselves jacked up to do what they do.
Yes.
Some of them really look like they should have been extras on Breaking Bad. I guess maybe you don't know about Breaking Bad.
That's a film, isn't it?
No, it was a series on television about a meth dealer.
Oh.
And he also uses ricin to get rid of his enemies.
Oh, well, there you go. Just like that Canadian woman out of
Canadian
Buffalo.
woman must kill Trump. What did she tweet? #kill Trump.
And then she had a plan B if that didn't work. Was that what I heard this morning?
What her plan B was.
Yeah, I heard this morning.
Yeah. Could it have been anthrax?
Apparently, they don't appreciate elections that much, and so they have to push the envelope.
All right. So, and there's also a new study out that says BLM and Antifa are paranoid schizophrenics.
Well, I think that's probably true. There's probably some context to that.
In other words, they're the leftist version of QAnon.
And they can't wait for elections either.
That many of the BLM people have been interviewed and have said that they believe that people are stalking them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's probably why they they shot that poor guy in Portland because
He was stalking them.
Even though he was stalking
Yeah, right.
the Trump guy, he probably thought the Trump guy was stalking him.
Well, isn't that schizophrenia by definition?
That is paranoid schizophrenia.
And now there's some big pharma shot now on television about those people. They have a new pharmaceutical product. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. So and it's kind of scary just to watch that commercial.
What is it about? What is the product?
It is the mindset of a paranoid schizophrenic.
Oh, okay.
And they're sharing that mindset
On
with
the commercial.
with the viewer.
Right.
And the viewers.
Because the medication calms them down.
And right, yeah. Well, ostensibly that's the purpose. And,
Right.
and I remember thinking to myself, I hope that works, because that's kind of an uncomfortable person to be, walking among us. You know.
Right. But usually they say paranoid schizophrenics are not violent, but still, BLM appears to be the exception to the rule. And BLM took down its political page on their
did they?
website. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
They took down that whole thing about getting rid of the nuclear family.
The whole thing about Marx not going over well.
Yeah. It takes a village to raise the kids. They want to have, and this has been done in American history. It's the same thing with worker co-ops. There's a socialist that keeps it's on the leftist, videos,
Yeah.
and he keeps talking about worker co-ops. Like, I worked for a major 500 company that had over 100,000 employees. So his idea is every Friday you could have a skeleton crew manning the business, and everybody else, all 100,000 employees, can vote on the business.
Oh.
Are we going to buy new planes? Are we going to go into debt? Are we going to, take advantage of this tax
How's that
break?
going over with shareholders?
Well, it hasn't been done. But if you wanted to have a worker co-op business in this country, you're free to do it. If you wanted to have, we've had numerous communes. In the '60s, we had the big commune movement. In the '60s and '70s, we had numerous examples of people trying to set up utopian communities. And the thing is, it doesn't go over very well. After a while, they break up. And so what they want to do is pass laws that would force everybody to be into one of these types of non-nuclear family, everybody raises the kids type communities.
It sounds like the civil equivalent of CHOP in Seattle.
Yes,
exactly.
exactly.
Kind of a thing.
It also sounds like the kibbutz, which are no longer in Israel. They tried the kibbutz. They tried this voluntarily in Israel. It didn't work out for very long. Mm-hmm. After a while, people have individual needs and desires, and they break away from this type of thing. And that's why capitalism works, and that's why Western civilization has done what it's done.
Well said.
Yes.
Very well said.
So, also in the news, we had the Louisville case dropped, and they did indict one policeman. It was thought they might not indict any of them.
Oh, no, just this morning.
Just this morning,
yeah. The grand jury has indicted a Louisville cop there. So the city is bracing their boarding
they've been boarding up businesses and everything, bracing. We'll see. Today they were peaceful, but what happens after dark is another question, right? So we're going to have to see what goes on in Louisville tonight. And, of course, Rand Paul has the correct way to do it is, end the drug war, which we've been talking about for years.
Yeah,
but
first and foremost.
Yeah, but the second thing is end the no-knock raids, And so that's the correct way to do it. It's not always the policeman's fault when somebody signed off on a bad warrant in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what happens with these drug cases. They all too often are anonymous snitches, and they can't. There's no real responsibility taken by the judges, and they send the police off on these missions, although they did indict that one policeman, so we'll see what the case is on him. And the Proud Boys have been in the news.
Proud
again.
Boys, yeah.
Yes. And if you don't know, they're a social group. They're not known to carry weapons, although they have been known to fight if they're aggressed against. and they are pro-Trump, pro-white, not white supremacy, but at least out there, and there are not people of color in the Proud Boys, but they're out there basically defending Western civilization and so on.
Well, they were a no-show in the city of brotherly love.
Yeah,
last weekend.
they tricked them, Antifa in Philadelphia last weekend. They said they were going to be there, and then they didn't show up, and Antifa showed up, and there was nobody to fight. So
Antifa was stood up.
Yeah,
by the
they
Proud
stood
Boys.
up. But they've claimed they're going to be in Portland on Saturday,
Yep.
so we'll see.
Been awfully quiet in Portland over the past week or so, huh?
Well, they have
Here
been
and there,
some riots
some
in the last few days after the smoke dissipated some.
That's right. They
But
don't
they're
like to riot when there's a lot of smoke in here.
Yeah, no, it's bad for the lungs.
Bad for the health.
Yeah.
But there was an incident, a confrontation with a homeowner there who was displaying an American flag, and they went after him, a group of them.
Right. An American
I think in fact, I think the homeowner was black.
Huh.
Yeah.
A traitor to his race.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And they don't like small businesses. You ever notice that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because they don't pay the $15 or $20 an hour
Right.
that they're demanding.
That's right. Yeah.
So they're non grata too.
What about that sad case of Jake Gardner?
Yeah, we should get into that. He was a bar owner in Red State, Omaha, of all places, and the BLM showed up outside his bar and they were threatening him. His 70-year-old grandfather went out to confront them, and he got into a verbal altercation and apparently shoved one of them. But then after he shoved him a little bit, the 70-year-old guy was knocked to the ground, so they hit him back pretty hard. Mm-hmm. So then Jake showed up, appeared outside the bar, and he lifted up his shirt to show that he had a gun in his waistband. And they told them to back off, but they still kept coming at him. So he fired 2 warning shots, but 3 of them jumped him. After he fired the 2 shots, 2 of them got off him, but the third one stayed on him. He had him from behind. He had him in a chokehold. So Jake switched gun hands and fired his weapon over his shoulder. And he killed the assailant who was hanging onto his back and choking him.
There's more than one way to use that gun, huh?
Yeah. As Keith Rittenhouse has shown.
Yeah.
Have you seen the video of Keith, the new video?
Yeah, the new video. Tucker had it on, was it night before last? Yeah, it's pretty interesting, yeah.
I know, it's under restriction on YouTube. You can go to see it, but you can't share it.
Well, they don't want you to share that kind of thing.
No.
But it's very clear they're going to have to, they may take this may run its course, but I think Rittenhouse is going to be acquitted based on this new visual that we've.
Well, I would think so.
I mean, before it goes to trial. I would
right.
think.
But poor Jake Gardner, the DA was going to call it self-defense, but then one of the politicians, I don't know if it was the mayor or somebody else, didn't like that and called for a special prosecutor. And the grand jury...
Special prosecutor in Omaha?
Yeah, and the grand jury indicted him for murder. And then after that, his landlord evicted him from his bar and even from his apartment. So he fled to relatives near Portland, as a matter of fact, and then recently took his own life in despair.
Yeah.
So that was
literally 2 or 3 days ago, wasn't
right.
it? Yeah.
And he was 38, a Marine veteran with 2 stints in Iraq. Supposedly, he was basically had a libertarian point of view.
Yeah.
Live and let live.
I think he probably just ran out of ammo.
Right. I mean, he lost his whole livelihood.
Yeah. His whole life literally changed in an instant.
Right. Amazing. Well, we'll be back. Should we talk a little foreign policy when we get
in the
there?
next segment? We should, because we haven't gotten to much of it yet, and that's what we do here, talking. A lot of arrows in our quiver.
like more energy? A photon sound beam may be the solution you need. A photon sound beam uses electrical energy to ionize gases that generate ozone and light to enter your body.
Getting to know you.
Let me tell you about America Matters with Eddie Floyd. It comes on every Monday at noon. Don't want you to miss it. That's America Matters with Eddie Floyd.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now, back to the show.
Well, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power. I'm Brendan Trainer. I'm here with Leland. And,
You know, we were on America Matters with Eddie Floyd a couple weeks ago.
Yes, we were.
It was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
And we have to ask, what is up with Mike Pompeo? What the heck is he doing?
We have to ask that?
We have to.
Okay.
Because, he went to the UN on this harebrained scheme that even though the U.S. left, under President Trump, we left the JCPOA, or the JPCOA, I think it is. Never mind, I'm not good with acronyms. And imposed sanctions. Not only did we leave the treaty or agreement, it wasn't really a treaty, but not only did we leave the agreement, that then we reimposed sanctions on Iran. And now suddenly we decided that we could call for the UN to impose new snapback sanctions on Iran because we decided, after we left the agreement, that Iran had not been compliant with the JCPOA, even though it's been ruled compliant throughout its history. I mean, in the recent years, there's been no change in that. It's always been ruled compliant. So what they did do, I think this is what he's getting at, after we left the JCPOA and imposed sanctions, Iran had voluntarily limited its uranium enrichment well below what it would be allowed to do as a member of the International Non-Proliferation Treaty. So it brought those back up to the levels it would have had as a signee to the treaty. And keep in mind, Israel has nuclear weapons, and they're not part of the international agreement. But so
Talk about the JCPOA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not part of the International Nuclear Non-Proliferation Agreement at all.
Right.
Yeah, so they don't let anybody inspect.
Even though they're our best ally.
Our best ally, yeah. And even though there's a law in the books that says we cannot give aid to any nuclear power that's not a signee to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. But that's ignored because it's Israel. You know, so laws don't apply.
Laws really don't apply there.
No. So in other words, this is getting convoluted, but in other words,
the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action is not really so jointed.
No, it's kind of disjointed right now.
Because Europe's out.
No, Europe is in.
No, it was 3 or 4 states that wanted to co-opt out, didn't they? Isn't that what I heard yesterday? We were on our own here.
Oh yeah, no, we're not. Europe is out of the new sanctions.
Yeah.
They're in the agreement.
Original agreement.
Yeah, but they're out of the sanctions.
Yeah, so it's not really a joint.
But Pompeo still announced that the sanctions are on, even though everybody's telling him no.
Because it's a unipolar world in his mind.
Right.
Most of the time.
It's the rules-based international order. That's what it is. And both China and Russia have recently issued statements saying that Russia and China both announced this week, just to clarify things, that they believe in international law, but they don't believe in the rules-based international order, which is what the U.S. is all about. Do you know the difference? I mean, in other words,
not really. Let's get him on the phone.
We make the rules, and you got to obey them. Is the rules-based international order?
Okay.
Whereas international law is supposed to be more for everybody, So everybody has a say, not just the U.S. So, and then Pompeo also likes to complain about Iran has ballistic missiles, but they're allowed to have ballistic missiles as long as they're not nuclear capable, which they're not. And then, of course, the saw that they keep saying is that Iran is the world's greatest exporter of terrorism, which is a complete fabrication. They don't have any evidence for that stands up to scrutiny. And if anybody is the world's greatest exporter of terrorism, it is the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, the usual suspects, and Israel. Everybody knows the Mossad runs around the world assassinating people left and right.
They're on international missions all the time.
Yes. So, and also the other thing that President Trump keeps saying this at his rallies, but General Soleimani was not a terrorist mastermind. He killed terrorists. He is the one that organized the resistance against ISIS. And there are even pictures of him taken with U.S. troops. The U.S. troops did not think he was a terrorist.
There's pictures of him with U.S. troops?
Yeah. He was.
Well, I've never seen those.
Yeah. He, of course,
for autographs and that kind of thing?
No, fighting, he appeared with U.S. troops due to his role in fighting ISIS, and we were supposedly fighting ISIS, but that's up to debate.
That's probably why he thought he was safe in Iraq on that occasion.
Yeah. So, and Iran is, then there was the rumor spread that Iran was going to assassinate the UN ambassador the United States ambassador to South Africa. She is a political patronage. I don't have her name in front of me now. I had it up last week. I should have brought it over, but she's just another patronage ambassador. In real life, she designs expensive, overpriced pocketbooks. That's her business.
She poured a lot of money in the campaign.
Into the campaign. She got a job as a patronage job as ambassador to...
Most of them are like that.
Right. Most of them are. Except the new ones to Germany and Afghanistan, which those are real ambassadorships. And, Congress is going to scream about them. But anyway, Iran is not going to murder a phony baloney, patronage ambassador. If they're going to murder anybody, it's not clear what they're going to do. But if they're going to take somebody out, it would have to be somebody that they would consider to be of sufficient prestige to revenge General Soleimani's death.
I think that'd be suicide. I think that comes from a desk at Langley somewhere.
Yeah.
Somebody just came up with that to protect themselves.
Primarily, after they fired off some rockets that did minimal damage after Soleimani was killed, they want to drive the U.S. from the Middle East. That's their revenge. I think.
What a coincidence! Because I want them out of there too.
Yeah, exactly. Trump should be bargaining with them.
Yeah. Well, I think there is some truth to that. That is how he's operating. It's the art of the deal.
Right. And Iran recently made overtures that they would like to do a prisoner swap with the U.S. And Trump loves to get prisoners back.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
So maybe
it's quite celebratory for him to.
Prisoner swaps can be, an icebreaker when you have two countries that are antagonistic. So we would like to see that happen, and the peace. So that's what they want to do. We don't see it in the papers, but there are Katyushka rockets raining in on American positions in Baghdad and our military bases in that area on almost a daily basis. I mean, that's they're not causing a lot of casualties, but they are, inflicting prestige damage on our position there.
Right.
And the Iraqis have made it clear they want us out, so we should be getting out.
Well, they're on their way, piecemeal, but they're on their way. I think there's going to be a dramatic withdrawal from Afghanistan prior to the election.
I would love to see that.
That negotiation with the Taliban looks like it's coming to fruition.
Right. And that's one thing I'll give Pompeo credit for. When push comes to shove, he will resist and resist and resist, but then I think he does a better job of negotiating than Bolton ever did.
Oh yeah, well Bolton is just the consummate globalist.
Yeah.
He didn't care about the United States of America.
No.
I think Pompeo's, naivete was, notwithstanding, he's Kansas, right? Isn't he from Kansas? I think it's Kansas.
Yeah.
That's a kind of the breadbasket of the country. It's real Americana there.
Yeah.
No matter how they draw him in, I don't think he'd ever accept a membership in the CFR or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
He's just, part of the team.
Right. And he's always been very Trump. After he denounced Trump when he was in as a senator, I think he was senator from Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
He was anti-Trump before the election, but then after the election, he's got his face up the president's.
Yeah, well, I don't think a lot of these people who were late to the Trump, understanding there are too many of them left.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're all on board now, and we're going to see that on the 3rd of November. I think the wind is at Trump's back.
I think so too. I think there is a silent majority, if you will, just like Nixon said.
These are leftover Tea Party people that were never involved in politics. Some
Right.
of them were never even registered in politics. They came out of the woodwork because they were, they saw something that inspired them to be more politically involved. And Trump has picked up that ball and run with it.
Right, and there are people calling into C-SPAN saying they're leaving the Democratic Party.
And, and all these rallies are opportunities for the administration to register.
Right. Keep on rioting.
Well, that show went by quickly.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think we're going to send this one over to the Talk the Truth to Power Broadcast Museum.
All right.
Pretty damn good.
Okay. We'll see you next week.